Hello there, it's Sarah from Paper Lovely. Thanks for joining me today. I'm back with part 2 of my 10 cards 1 kit using the Simon Says Stamp April 2018 card kit. If you haven't seen the first 5 cards, you can check those out on the video that I posted yesterday. So let's jump into card number 6. I'm starting out by stamping out this leaf and butterfly on some Neenah cardstock, and I'm using Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink. Here I'm going to show you just some quick coloring that I did using my Prismacolor colored pencils, and I will have the colors listed for you in my blog post. So I'm not sure if this top portion was supposed to be a flower or a leaf, but I wanted to have my butterfly hovering above it, so I decided that either way I was going to turn it into a flower. Now I wanted to create a sky scene, so I'm going to place some clouds up at the top of my panel, and I wanted this to be an encouragement card, so I wanted to add a silver lining to my clouds. I've taken some vellum here and I've added some 1/2 inch Scor-Tape. I did that twice, so I've got a full inch of this pretty foil, and I'm just going to make sure that that's down nice and tight, and then you'll see when I peel away the top paper, the foil is left behind. I'm using some Lawn Fawn Puffy cloud border dies, and I had already had some pre-cut clouds. I use these so often that when I make them, I will usually just cut a bunch of them at a time. But I grabbed the die cut to match one of the previous cuts that I had, and these are all from Neenah cardstock. And I'm just gonna layer these two to give a slight silver lining underneath that cloud. It's really subtle, but I think it gives it a really pretty effect. So now I'm taking a different cloud cut, and I'm going to place that, and then I'll add the cloud with the silver lining above that. I'm going to use this pretty blue and white striped paper to act as my sky background. And here I'm just going to trim off that excess, and I'm sort of laying things out because my paper was longer than I needed. I wanted to use that frame as a reference to make sure everything was going to fit where I wanted it. Here I'm going to use my Nuvo glue to attach down the leaves and flower and butterfly. So next I went ahead and actually ran all of that through with my MFT Blueprints 32 frame die, and I should have known better because I've got 3 layers of cardstock where those clouds are, but it did not cut the whole way through for me. I think if I had, really pushed it and run it through several times, it probably would have cut it, but I didn't want to do that and risk putting a mark on the inside of the panel. So I just went ahead and pulled it out and then used the guidelines that it left to me and trimmed it. And then there you can see I stamped the sentiment thinking of you, and I used Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink for that. I'm going to attach that panel to the top of my card base. And then for the inside panel, I went with the sentiment Keep Smiling. And then I'm going to go ahead and add that smaller sentiment that says Today is a New Day. And then for something different, I decided I would add these butterflies sort of floating off of either side. So I went with the largest and the smallest, and I'm stamping those using the blue ink that came in the kit, and that is Mermaid Lagoon. I'm going to go ahead and use my ATG gun, and I'll attach that on the inside of the card base. And that will complete card number 6. For card number 7, I am pulling in some of my MFT Pure Plum cardstock. I love this purple color. It's probably my favorite purple cardstock that anybody makes anywhere. And I'm stamping out the largest butterfly using Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink. I did then go ahead and take that to my scan and cut and just cut around the edges of that. And then here on some scrap Neenah cardstock, I am stamping out the sentiment, "You are simply the best." I had this one tiny little scrap of this cardstock, and I save everything for this reason. I'm going to use that as a stripe to go across the bottom. This card, this pattern paper didn't have a ton of purple in it, so I wanted to add a little bit more, and I thought this really rich color looked really nicely with it. So there you'll see I've just trimmed down that sentiment, and I'm backing it on some of the scrap cardstock, and I'm going to trim that out so that it has about a 1/16 of an inch border around all 4 sides. Next, I'll use my ATG gun, and I'm going to attach that small stripe probably about 2/3 of the way down the panel. I'll trim off that excess, and then I'm going to add that sentiment right in the center. Next, I decided I wanted to add, I'm not sure what you call this, but it's sort of the flying motion of the butterfly. If you guys know what that's called, let me know in the comments below. And I just added that using Intense Black ink. And then I'm going to add that panel to the top of my card base. And here I've got a mini action wobbler. I'm going to take that and place that, I ended up having to place it sideways so that it would fit across the back of the butterfly. And this was so exciting when I put it down on the card. It moves so great, and I can't believe that I didn't think of doing this until card number 7. But I am so happy with that movement, and I will, when I show you the final look at the card, I do have it slowed down to real time. For the inside of the card, I'm again working on a Neenah panel trimmed to 4x5 1/4, and here I'm going to stamp out that sentiment, "You make me feel like I can fly." I'm using Distress Oxide Worn Lipstick, and then I'm going to add this small solid butterfly, and I'll stamp that using Distress Oxide Seedless Preserves. I'll go ahead then and place that on the inside of my card base. And that will complete card number 7. For card number 8, I'm keeping things pretty simple again. I'm going to use another one of those Puffy Cloud border dies from Lawn Fawn to trim out a pretty thick piece of cloud there. And then I'm using this beautiful rainbow striped paper. This was another one of my favorites from the kit. And I'm going to attach that across the top portion of my card base. Then here I've got my clouds, and I'm again using my ATG gun, and I'm going to attach that along the bottom. I left this probably about the bottom third is probably what makes up the cloud portion of that, and then of course I'll trim off the extra. I went with the sentiment "Have a beautiful day," and I'm going to stamp that on top of the clouds using Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink. And then here for the inside panel, I took 2 of the smaller sentiments and placed those together so that it will read "Stay strong, you can do it." And I'm going to again take that swirl of the flying motion as well as that smaller solid butterfly, and I'm going to stamp those around the sentiment using the Distress Oxide Worn Lipstick. I thought that pink matched the pink in the stripe on the front really well. I'm going to go ahead and attach that panel on the inside of my card base, and that will complete card number 8. Card number 9 is a little bit different from the usual cards that I make, but I had a lot of fun with this. I was basically using a bunch of scraps that I had left over, so I'm going to use this rainbow stripe and I'm going to cover the whole front panel of my card base. And then I grabbed these extras and sort of laid them out. I'm going to add this red stripe at an angle. And then on top of that, this yellow at a different angle. And then finally across the bottom third, I've got this leftover green as well as this blue. So I trimmed off all the excess there and decided to go with the sentiment, "You make me feel like I can fly." I'm going to stamp that on the yellow portion. And then I'm going to again add that swirl, and I'm also adding in the butterfly silhouettes there. So I'm going to stamp those 2 first, and then I will add a third butterfly to sort of create a triangle there to keep the eye moving. Now you'll see that where I stamped the solid butterflies over the 2 different layers of paper, I did get a little bit of a line. I'm just going in with my Memento Tuxedo Black marker, and I'm just coloring the edges of the paper there so that the line isn't so noticeable. For the inside, I'm again using a Nina panel trimmed to 4 by 5 1/4. I'm going to stamp the sentiment, "I adore you," using intense black ink. And then below that, I again added a solid butterfly, and that I stamped in Distress Oxide Twisted Citron. I then grabbed another scrap piece of paper that had the white with the rainbow stripes on it and placed that along the bottom. I added that to the inside of my card base, and that completes card number 9. So for card number 10, at this point I was kind of getting tired of butterflies and wanted to try and do something different. So I kept looking at these butterflies, and for some reason I was seeing the face of an owl. So I took the smaller of the 2 that had this pattern, and I'm stamping that out using intense black ink, and you can see there I just used a paper towel to wipe away the majority of the ink that was on the antennas. And here I'm just going through with my pencil, and I'm going to create some cheeks and a forehead and a chin, and then just a round sort of little body for the owl. And then once I was happy with the penciled in shape, I'm grabbing my tuxedo black marker and I'm just going to go around the pencil lines to make the lines a little bit bolder. And I did actually go over the lines twice. I was trying to get them to around the same thickness as the lines that were the part of the stamp. And then here I realized that I forgot to give him some wings, so I'm just going back in with my pencil and then with my marker to create some marks for the wings. I've left the coloring in, but I've sped it up pretty quickly. I'm basically just using a bunch of brown tones along with some yellow for the eyes and some orange for the beak and the claws. And I will have all of the colors listed for you on my blog post. So I then decided I wanted to sort of make it look like my owl was going to be sitting in a tree. So I'm taking this leaf stamp and I'm stamping that out using Distress Oxide Twisted Citron. And I'm going to stamp 3 of those. And then I did just a little bit of quick coloring just with these 2 green colors. Again, I'll have them listed on my blog post for you. And then I went ahead and fussy cut around the owl as well as those 3 branches. So I've got another piece of that cardstock that I got at Michael's. This is actually a leftover piece from the circle that I cut in the previous video. So I trimmed out about 1.5 inches of that. No, actually I think it was just 1 inch. And I think this owl is just so grumpy looking that I had to use that Keep Smiling sentiment. I thought it was just perfect. So here I'm going to attach this as going to sort of be my tree branch. And then I've laid everything out. I'm going to pull away the owl and I'm going to use my Nuvo glue to stick down all of the branches. Next, I'll go ahead and add that Keep Smiling sentiment, and I used my intense black ink to stamp that. And then I went ahead and popped up the owl using some Scotch foam tape, and I'll place him in the center of all those branches there. I'm gonna use my HEG gun and I'll attach that to the top of the card base. And then for the inside panel, I'm again on a Nina panel trimmed to 4x5 1/4. I stamped the sentiment, "Today is a new day," using intense black ink. And then I'm going to come in and add an additional branch, and I'll stamp that again using the Distress Oxide in Twisted Citron. I'll go ahead then and attach that on the inside of my card base. And then for a final touch, I added a little bit of glossy accents on his eyes. And that will complete card number 10. Here is a quick look back at all of the cards from today. Additional photos as well as a full list with supplies can be found at my blog post, linked in the description below. If you enjoyed the video, please leave me a comment or a thumbs up and subscribe for more. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.